Hello, dear SEO podcast viewers. Today's admins are me, Zoe, and Red, a new member of the SEO family. Red, how about you talk a little bit about yourself and how you're feeling about your first official project with SEO?
Hello. First of all, thank you for having me here. And I guess a fun fact about me, I do like to draw quite a lot in my spare time. So I usually will be doing that locked inside my room. Kind of sad, I don't know. As Zoe mentioned, this is my first project, but I am very excited to be here and thankful for this opportunity.
Why, great. Okay. And so, as I'm sure our viewers have noticed, this video is a little different from our past podcast videos. Since it's June, Pride Month, Something Extraordinary wanted to celebrate the joy and talk about the sadness that can sometimes loom that's involved in the mental health of the LGBTQ plus community by having a candid interview with one of its members. Okay, so hello, our dear guest. Could you please introduce yourself for us?
Hello. I'm 16, I guess, and recently I've been trying to figure out my own identity and trying to welcome myself into the LGBT community.
Okay, and what is your name?
Alex.
Okay, so yeah, today we have with us Alex. And so from what I understand, it was recently that you found out that you were bisexual. Could you map out for us your journey to discovering your own sexual orientation?
All right, so my journey, my journey with discovering my own identity has been mostly pretty recent. I wouldn't say I've fully figured out what I identify with yet, but it was pretty recently in the last I don't know 6 months that I discovered that I had attraction to men, and I've been trying to think about that and see where it fits in with the rest of my identity. So that's about it for now.
Was there a key moment in which you knew you were bisexual?
Yeah, I would say it came a few months ago when this was during, I think it was spring break, and I was still doing online school. I wasn't getting out much, and I was thinking to myself, and I was getting a lot closer with one of my male friends. And it occurred to me, and not all at once, but it occurred to me that I was attracted to him for a long time. So that's about when it started, I guess.
Okay, and so have you come out yet with your identity or sexual orientation?
Right. So not to very many people. I've come out to my sister and a few of my close friends, but not, I guess I haven't kept it much of a secret from anyone except most of my family, but I haven't been very public about it either. So I'm still getting there.
Yeah, and I know coming out could be very difficult at times, but have you personally experienced discrimination or prejudice from friends, family, or strangers that have seen or heard of such?
So I wouldn't say I've personally been on the receiving end of discrimination, but I have heard a lot of just little things that mostly my parents have said in their opinions about the LGBT community that are making me reluctant to discuss it with them. So I haven't been really the victim of anything, but definitely a bit unsettling to be around that.
Okay. And what was your response to that?
What kind of response? Well, I guess when I hear those things, I don't usually turn it into an argument because I don't see there's much way to change their minds about it. When I see other people saying those remarks, I usually call them out about it. But overall, I haven't been as upfront with that as maybe I should have been.
Okay.
Okay.
Yeah. And so, given the story that you kind of talked about, so I assume that you were in a state of confusion when you tried to organize your feelings into a coherent sort of label, I suppose. And so how did that confusion affect your school, work, and or social life? And I would just like to note here that since you talked about your parents perhaps not being very open about sort of a discussion around the LGBTQ plus community, has that also affected the elements of your life?
Yeah, well, so there's a few different things to touch on. First, my social life, definitely. So this was around like nearing the end of online school. So I stayed at home a lot, and it usually didn't affect my studies that much. I'm usually pretty focused on that. But all the rest of the time I had to myself, I was thinking about it a lot, trying to rationalize my feelings and thoughts. So it did affect my social life. I started talking less to people, trying to figure out what I was doing. The people I did talk to, my really close friends, I talked to them about it because I didn't know what I was feeling, and I was trying to see if they could help me. So for a while, yes, it did uh, mess with my social life a bit. And about my family, I haven't been, say, extremely open with them. Uh, did that last part get okay? I'll say it again.
Okay.
As for my family, I haven't been extremely open with them for a while, I guess. So I mostly just avoid conversations relating to the community. They don't bring it up very much, but it is definitely something I've had to be careful about.
Okay. And so have you sort of tried to just avoid that topic at all in regards to your family?
Yeah, I would say I did. I used to say a few months ago, I used to try and talk to my mom about it because one of my friends is trans, and I was trying to, inform her about that, but it wasn't it wasn't really sticking. And I guess when I started to get confused about my own identity, I kind of gave up on it for a while.
Okay. And so would you count that sort of confusion at that stage of figuring it out? Would you count that as negativity, or how would you sort of describe that?
All right. So it wasn't entirely a negative experience, I'd say. Um, it didn't. I wouldn't say it was that negative. It didn't affect my self perception very much. I've been getting better at that. That wasn't a particularly great time for me mentally, but I don't think it contributed that much in my case, anyway.
Okay. And then, so since SEO is a mental health awareness central blog/podcast, for our viewers, we wanted to ask you if you had any tips for alleviating negativity that other members of the community might be feeling.
Yeah. So I've for a long time in my life, I've lived with say low self esteem, maybe imposter syndrome, some depression, and stuff like that. So I can see how trying to figure out your own identity would factor into that. So one of the things I'd say as more of a coping mechanism than anything is just what's worked for me is trying to find some activity that helps me get my mind off of things and helps me feel good about something, like I'm accomplishing something. And another thing is trying to find, this won't apply to everyone, but trying to find friends or people around you that you can talk to about it and who can support you through it or distract you from it even. So that's what I would have to say to them.
Okay, great. And actually, you touched on a topic that Red is going to ask you about. So that's important.
All right. So, have you really received any support, whether that be indirectly, directly, even through a social media post? And how does that affect you?
Well, so as for whether I've received support, definitely from the people I've come out to, they haven't made a huge deal about it, but they've all been very accepting and relaxed about it, which makes it feel normal in a sense. So that's definitely helped me come to terms with that and try and figure out how it works specifically in my brain, because I know I have friends to talk to that will understand.
All right. And how does that, I mean, you kind of already touched up on this, but how does that affect you on a larger scale, I guess?
I'd say having a small support group around me and knowing even that people I don't normally talk to are still there to help me understand. So that has definitely helped me in the long run, because for me, having people to talk to has always been a really big part of maintaining my mental health, because if I can't have other people to listen to my ideas and get them out of my head, then I start losing control of them. So in the long run, it's definitely helped my mental health to have people to talk to about this during my journey.
Of course, of course. And I guess as you're discovering more about yourself, what is the value of the LGBTQ plus community or allies to you?
Yeah. So even for a while, I considered myself not to be part of the community, but even then, I saw that the LGBT community was for the most part, a very accepting place and very accepting of especially mental health problems. So the LGBT community has been important to me even before I realized that I belonged in there, because a lot of the people I know who are in the LGBT community are very open and understanding to mental health issues and talking about stuff like that. So I'd say the community has value as well, a community, people to support each other, but not just regarding your sexuality or identity.
Okay, so would you say that when trying to, alleviate any perhaps mental health issues you're having or any negativity, that what you want to hear from others is that sort of welcoming, that accepting, response or atmosphere that they try to cultivate?
So yeah, I would agree that one of the most important things for the LGBTQ community to maintain is a welcoming and accepting atmosphere, because I mean, for a very long time the community has been subject to intolerance, and you really need a completely open atmosphere to discuss ideas and figure yourself out, to where you can figure out what parts of you belong, what parts of the community are relevant to you and what you identify with, if anything. So I'd say a welcoming and open atmosphere is very important.
All right. And then for our viewers, so some of them may be new to the community, what would you say to others, particularly the youth who are trying to figure out themselves?
Yeah. So if I had to say one thing to new members of the LGBT community who are still trying to figure themselves out, if I had to say one thing to them, it would be that no matter how you label yourself, or if you label yourself, or how you feel, that you are a valid and important part of the community. And um, as long as you are kind and accepting in return, you should always be able to find a place in the community and work on finding people who feel the same way as you.
I'm sure that'll be some good advice. And so for our next question, what would you like to say to people who may not have a good understanding of the LGBTQ plus community?
All right, so I'll definitely admit, for a long time I didn't understand or was involved in the community, and until very recently I considered myself an outsider to the community. So I have definitely a few things to say to those who don't understand the community or don't seem to agree with a lot of the things they hear about it. So one thing is, it's pretty simple. You should listen to the members of the community tell their own stories. You can find videos, podcasts, articles by countless members of the community, and if you just keep an open mind, then that will definitely help you learn more and more. Because no matter what you hear about it, you'll never really understand what the community is about unless you hear it from someone inside the community. And one more thing, is you've probably heard a lot of things about the LGBTQ community that seem bad or nonsensical or just seem kind of weird to you. And what I'd say to that is to one, question a lot of the things you hear about the community. It might be true and it might not be, but above all, you should try and think, why are these people saying this, and why is the community doing this? Who does it help to do this? And what was I going to say? You should also question your own thought processes, because I found myself a lot being just dismissive of when a certain issue is brought up, like, oh, that's just how it is. But if you really want to understand the community and be able to help and support people you know who are in the community, it's good to understand as much as you can. Try and think about, if a certain issue is happening, think about why it's happening, who it's affecting, and what you can do to deal with that, instead of dismissing something. So overall, just keep an open mind when you're trying to learn about the community. It's a great place, and it'll definitely help if you let yourself learn about it.
Thank you so much for that. And one last question to leave our viewers with something to think about. Going forward, how do you hope the mental health scene in the LGBTQ plus community will change?
So going forward, there's obviously, I can have as many hopes and dreams as I want about the world changing to be more accepting, but one big thing I would like to see out of the community is treating, not necessarily just from the community, but for everyone involved with it, treating mental health issues more seriously, and not as if it's necessarily intertwined with being in the LGBT community. Now, I know a lot of mental health is very closely related to that, but a lot more importance to mental health and therapy and counseling, even for anyone interested in the community, anyone involved with it, would be very nice to see. And hopefully one day things like therapy won't be as stigmatized.
All right, thank you so much for all of your responses so far. And I hope our own viewers will take that question that I just asked and think about it in their own time. So for our ending statement, thank you so much, Alex, for talking about your experiences today. And thank you so much for tuning in, everyone.
You're welcome.
And so please look to the bio/comments below for when our next blog article and our next video may be up. Once again, we hope to be the sunrise to your sunset.
Yes, thank you so much, Alex. And don't forget to follow our socials displayed on screen.